Hey guys, and welcome to the video. So today I'd like to talk to you about sugar cravings, how to cure sugar cravings. So sugar cravings are not a very nice thing because you feel like you are losing control, and when you don't have control, it's hard to reach your goals, right? So you may think and plan one thing, but end up losing control and doing another thing. So you may plan a healthy day of eating, but end up breaking that promise to yourself and having some cake or some chocolate. And that leads to feelings of guilt and low trust in yourself. So it has like a spiral of feelings and emotions that go with that as well, which can end up linking back in and making you feel like you want to eat more sugar, basically. So I'm curious, do you suffer from this? Do you get sugar cravings? Do you feel like you're addicted to sugar? Let me know down in the comments. I'd like to know, what do you crave? And when do you crave it? And so if you stick around to the end, I'll be talking about what you need to do to solve sugar cravings, how you do it, and none of the rubbish that people usually talk about as well. So stick around and you will find out just that. So first of all, what causes sugar cravings or sugar addiction, otherwise known as emotional eating or mindless eating, snacking, urges? All those things can be encompassed into the same thing of you feel like you're losing control and you don't have that control over your thoughts and decisions. The short truth is that cravings are just habits, and habits are stored in the unconscious primitive part of your brain, which deals with emotions and keeping you alive. So whether you know it or not, whether you realize it or not, every habit you have has a function to help you, whether you can see that or not. So when you get a craving for sugar, it's not actually the food that you're craving. It's a change in feeling or a change in state. So food is actually the vehicle to get you there. So food is not the outcome, but actually the way of changing how you feel. So it's really important to understand that. So let's explain it like this. So you have an unwanted feeling or an unwanted state. So it might be that you feel sad, it might be that you feel lonely, it might be that you feel bored, or you might feel sort of worthless, or any kind of state. And so you want to feel a different way. And your brain has learnt through just experimentation at some point that having some food with sugar in it makes you feel a different way. So you were here and you had the food, it drove you to here, and it changed the way you felt. And a really big thing to understand about your unconscious mind is it takes the path of least resistance. So what I mean by that is the easiest way to solve your problem, it will use, whether it is good for you in the long run or not, because its primary objective is to keep you alive, and that involves your emotions and your states. So if you have negative emotions, that is a threat to your survival. So it wants to solve that problem. If you're putting on weight by doing it, it doesn't care because its primary objective is to keep you alive now. So that's why you can form habits which seem bad, but to your survival, your primitive brain, they have a function to solve that problem, which is a threat to survival. So it wants to keep that intact, and it wants to use that method to solve that problem because that's the easiest way to get you from A to B. So the point there is to remember that it's not the sugar that you want, it's the change in feeling. The sugar or the food is just the way you get that change of feeling. So it's a bit like an app on your phone. So everyone has apps on their phone, and when you press the app, you don't really know what's going on in the background. You press it, press a few things, and whatever the app is there to do, it does. So the same with a habit. The design of a habit is to save time and energy for your brain. So when it's packaged up into the habit, you have a trigger and it runs and you get the outcome. So you have the trigger of the feeling, and whatever you do in the process, the vehicle, as I mentioned in this case, eating the sugar, kind of runs, and sometimes it's very mindless as well, and that's why sometimes you feel like, oh yeah, I didn't really think about that, and then you get the outcome of the changed feeling. So that's what a habit is. It's a way to save time and energy, and don't really have to think about what you're doing. Like a really common habit that I like explaining is tying your shoelaces. So this is kind of like packaged into a let's tie our shoelaces app, let's say. So when you go to tie your shoelaces, you don't think about how to do that. You don't think, oh, how do the laces go? You think, I'm putting my shoes on, let's tie the laces, mindless, do it. Like it's part of a program, like an app on your phone. So what actually causes sugar cravings? So it's different for everyone, but it will be a trigger. So be it a time in the day where you feel a certain way, or whether someone says something to you to make you feel a certain way, or a visual thing of seeing something, like be it food or be it something that makes you feel a certain way. So it all comes back to the feelings, and you want to change how you feel. And like I said, your brain has learned that the quickest way to change how you feel is eating the sugar or the food or whatever you are using to change the way you feel. So just a side note, how do you identify that you're having a craving? So hunger versus craving. So when you are hungry, hunger builds up gradually and you feel it in your stomach, and it disappears after you have a meal until like a few hours later when your next meal is due. And once you've had that meal, you feel a feel of satisfaction. You feel satisfied from eating. So with cravings, often with sugar, you will get that feeling which comes on suddenly. It's usually a feeling in your mouth, and you will not be satisfied, not necessarily be satisfied once you've eaten it. You will often crave more. And after you've had it, you often don't feel satisfied. You feel feelings of guilt because you often violate your decisions and your promises to yourself. And also as well, it's usually for specific types of food. So if you were to get a craving and I offered you a carrot, you probably would say, no. But if I offered you chocolate, you'd probably say, yes, please. So now a really important question to ask. Are you actually craving sugar, or is it something else? Because when we look into the foods that are commonly craved, like ice cream, chocolate, cake, cookies, things like that, they're often quite high in fat as well. So is it actually the sugar, or is it actually the fat? Is it the sugar because you've been told that it's sugar you're craving? I've got my information here, so I've looked up a few of these things. So ice cream, the ice cream I looked up, had 154 calories per 100 grams from fat and only 92 from sugar. Cake had 160 from sugar and 208 from fat per 100 grams. Cookies, 136 from sugar and 198 from fat. And chocolate, 224 from sugar and 270 from fat. So all these foods that are really high in sugar, and you probably say, I'm craving sugar because I'm eating chocolate or ice cream or cookies, they actually have more fat. So how do you know it's the sugar you're craving? Just because someone told you? Or why? So for me, a better explanation is that you're just craving high calorie and nice foods. Again, your survival brain is designed to seek out high calorie foods because that in the past would have been what helped keep you alive, lots of calories, no chance of dying then. So in actual fact, when you're craving certain things like chocolate, cake, etc., you're craving things high in sugar, high in fat, that have really nice properties that are tasty, like things like texture, things like taste, things like smell, things like color of food attracts you to it. So all these different things, like you've ever had like a really nice piece of cake that like has a specific texture to it, like a gooey center and like the texture, the lightness. It's all those things that come together that make you like that food. It's not the fact that it's high in sugar, it's all the properties that make it a high calorie, high palatable food that to your survival brain is a really good thing to eat because it will, help keep you alive. And obviously nowadays when food is in abundance and you can just grab it anywhere, that's not necessarily true anymore because we have a lot of problems with obesity where people are dying from overeating rather than being malnourished. So is it actually sugar you're addicted to? Let's answer that question simply by doing this. So as a test to see if you are really addicted to sugar, do you ever have urges and cravings to do this? Yummy. If you don't, I think you're okay. And also these days as well, we highly process foods. So some of these things that have high fat and high sugar would have been whole foods in the past. So sugar comes from sugar cane and sugar beet. If you were to eat some sugar cane or sugar beet, you would eat a few bites before you were satisfied and wouldn't get much sugar in. Same with fats. Fats, let's say, for example, seeds. You wouldn't eat like hundreds and hundreds of seeds, you'd eat a few before you're satisfied, and you can't eat them so fast. Whereas oils or things like, let's say nuts, which are opened and ready to eat, it's very easy to get a lot in a very short amount of time, especially when, as well, you might put them into things where you don't really see them and you don't really notice them as well. So the next thing to discuss is what you're actually feeling. Is it addiction, or is it something else, or is it a different type of addiction? Because empowering yourself, I want to empower you to understand that what you have is within your control. Whereas a lot of people that are addicted to things, they feel it's outside their control and they need like medical or external or something fixing with themselves. And with this, it's not the case. So within psychology, we have two types of addiction. So we have behavioral addiction. So that's addiction to certain behaviors. And we have substance addiction. So that is more stuff with like drugs and alcohol. So behavioral addiction is more here. So it's psychological, whereas substance addiction is more physiological. So it's a need by the body. Once you get addicted to drugs, you need it to survive. Whereas with behaviors, you don't need that to actually survive. You may feel some symptoms of like not having that thing. Those are the urges and cravings. But without it, you don't get ill and you don't die. So I touched on what habit is before, and that is basically similar to what a behavioral addiction is. So anything that stimulates us will change how we feel. And anything that changes how we feel can become a behavioral addiction. So it could be something you like. So like anything you enjoy doing can become a behavioral addiction, from like being on your phone all day, the internet, or things like gambling, shopping. Like stroking puppies is like nice and it makes you feel good. So some people really enjoy stroking puppies and they get not necessarily addicted, because you don't necessarily use that word for it, but you feel like, I want to do that. I need to stroke that dog in the street, because it's a behavioral thing that makes you feel good. So anything that makes you feel good changes the way you feel and can be stored in your brain as a way or a habit that then can come with urges and cravings to do that thing, right? So basically it builds connections, neural connections in your brain. So it's like saying, when you feel like this, do this because it gets you to this, and that helps you feel a different way and it solves your problem. So all the behavioral addiction is just a way to change how you feel that your unconscious survival brain has learnt that is very useful. So empower yourself by understanding that you're not addicted as in a substance addiction where your body becomes dependent on that thing, and without it you become ill and can possibly die as well. With behavioral addictions, that doesn't happen. So you've probably seen on the internet things like, sugar is as addictive as cocaine. Well, it's not the same type of addiction. It's the behavioral versus the substance, the psychological versus the physiological addiction, and they're very different. Sometimes they can have similarities in terms of the cravings, but the actual seriousness and the way you solve it is very different. So take away that label of addiction, which is attached to things like hard drugs, and empower yourself, because now you don't have that label. You have more control over how you solve your problem. And actually the way you think about it is it's not such a big problem to solve, because it's not the same as solving a substance addiction problem. You don't need to go into rehab, and you don't have that risk of dying, like I said before. However much it feels like horrible to have a craving for sugar, the risk is not the same as cocaine or heroin or any other hard drugs. So what people usually teach and why it doesn't work to actually solve sugar cravings in the long term. So I always see people writing on the internet ways to help you with sugar cravings. And although they may help in the short term, it doesn't help in the long term. So I see things like have a little bit, or have some dark chocolate to satisfy the craving, or have a diet version, a sweet diet version of the product. It might be cut it out altogether. That's a really popular one. It might be clean your teeth. It might be have some gum, things like that. And so there's various reasons why these don't work long term. So let's quickly go through them. So things like cleaning your teeth, that the reason that people say that is that, number one, it changes the taste and how you perceive the food. So if you remember before, the taste of food is very important in liking it. Also, cleaning your teeth is kind of putting an end to the day of I finished eating, so now I'm not going to eat anymore kind of thing. Gum, if you have something in your mouth as well, you can't put something else in your mouth. So as well as changing the way the food tastes from the gum taste, if you've got something in your mouth, you can't eat something. Things like having some dark chocolate, you are basically not eating what you want to, and you probably end up eating what you want to anyway in some cases, not all cases, but that could be something that happens to you. So having a little bit and cutting things out. So it's quite important here, this one. So a lot of people with cravings, when they have a little bit of something, that's when they lose control, because their brain is, oh, look, we have it now. Let's satisfy this craving and just have some more until we until we get enough to satisfy that craving, because we're going to be restricted again for a while. And then the cutting out one. So this is really important, especially psychologically. So a couple of things to understand here. Your brain doesn't process negative instructions. So what I mean by that is if I say, don't think of a pink elephant, what happens? You have to think of a pink elephant. So even though I've said don't, anything with a negative in the sentence, so whether it's don't or not or less or whatever, it has to process the noun in the sentence. So don't think of a pink elephant. You still have to imagine that, right? So that's the first point for this. The second point is when you want to be able to learn something, you don't necessarily need to do it in real life. You can imagine doing it. So with sports players and actors, they often practice their lines or scoring a goal or something in their mind before they actually do it, or when they're not actually at the place where they do their thing. So an actor will go over their lines in their head, and a sports player might think about kicking a ball, scoring a goal, and imagining how to do it. And that actually practices it and builds neural connections. So when we combine these 2 points together, so your mind doesn't process negative instructions and what we call mental rehearsal and practice. So when you say, I'm not going to eat chocolate and I'm going to be really good, I'm going to use my willpower, you're basically practicing chocolate in your mind. So you're thinking about it, your mind has to imagine it. So as long as your willpower is there, you're okay. But as you know, willpower does not last. So as soon as your willpower runs out, what you've done is practice and practice and practice eating chocolate. So then that causes a binge. So the point here comes back to neural connections in your brain. So if you remember, I said you feel a certain way and you want to change that to a different feeling, and the food, the sugar, is the connection between that. So that's the neural connection that you built. So with doing things that keep the connection alive, you're always going to have that craving. So when you are basically giving in or having diet foods that's still sweet, if you have a craving and you have something that's sweet, you're still keeping that connection alive. Whether it is the chocolate or some Diet Coke, you're still having something sweet to solve that problem. So you're still going to get that craving every day. So that's the point here. So I like to use the analogy of the forest. So if you imagine walking through a thick green forest and there's not really a path through it, not really a way. And so one day, a small animal kind of sort of runs through the forest, and that's his route. And now, because he's taken that route, his other little friends take that route as well, because it's slightly easier to take. He might have brushed a few of the bushes out of the way or something like that. And because more and more animals start to take this route, then it starts to sort of get a bit worn down, and bigger animals can take it, and the path actually gets a bit bigger. And over time, bigger and bigger animals can take this path because it gets sort of brushed out of the way and the path gets more and more trodden. So maybe from little voles up to big deer start to be able to walk down this path now. And because it's big enough for deer, maybe it's big enough for people as well. So as people start to walk down it, they think, oh, this is a nice path. Let's put a pavement on it to make it a bit easier and stop being so muddy. So it becomes easier and easier to actually walk down this path, and they cut away some of the undergrowth as well. So this path becomes super easy to walk down, and because it's got pavement on it as well, you can probably cycle down it as well and go pretty fast. So when we think about this in terms of cravings, now this is a very easy route to take. And so this is your solving a problem from, I feel like this way, I feel sad or something, and I want to solve this problem. The path you have is super, super easy to take. It's that you can cycle down it and run down it really fast. So it's a very easy path to take. You don't have another solution to this problem. So what you actually need to do is have a different path. You need to make a new path with your new solution. And so the point with this, I won't explain it too much more, is that the path you have at the moment, as long as you keep smashing the undergrowth away and making it bigger and bigger by doing things that keep the cravings alive, like having diet foods that are still sweet, or having giving into the cravings, or having things that are related to keeping that thing alive, that path, that neural pathway alive, you're always going to have that craving every day. Whether you make it go away by using a temporary solution, be it having the diet product or chewing some gum or something, it's always going to be there as long as you keep satisfying that craving. So what you want to do is change the vehicle. So the vehicle is the food, remember? The vehicle is how you're changing that feeling. So you have a certain feeling. So be it sadness or boredom or just having a bad day. And this is your pathway. This is the food to get you to the different feeling. And this is what you're using. As long as you keep it like working, as long as it's a valid route, you're never going to get rid of that craving. So this is the point I want to make with this. You have to have a different pathway. You have to create a new pathway. At the moment, this is a super easy pathway and it's automatic and it's really fast to go down and is really clear. Whereas any other pathway that you have is either not created yet, or it's not very easy to go down. So you're always going to take the easiest pathway. Like I said before, your brain always takes the easiest route to get something, because why take a longer route? It doesn't care about your goals, it cares about keeping you alive. That's a really, really important point to understand with this. So how do you actually solve your sugar cravings and sugar addiction? So this is the route you need to take. So the pathway you are using at the moment in your forest is an external vehicle. So food, sugar, all right? An external thing can sometimes be detrimental to you. So it could be sugar, but also it could be things like gambling. It could be alcohol, drugs, things like that. Those are basically external things that change the way you feel, right? The key, like I just alluded to, is making a new path in your forest with not an external vehicle, which basically can be detrimental to your goals, but an internal feeling which changes the way you feel, right? So what do I mean by that? So you can change the way you feel internally as well as externally, like with something like food. And the big advantage of something with something internally is that it usually doesn't have any detrimental side effects. And so let me just quickly explain that. So you can change the way you feel very easily by using your thoughts, okay? So let's say you are having a bad day. If you think about something like, let's say, a holiday that's coming up, a really exciting, really nice holiday that you've got planned, you can change the way you feel, right? That's an example of changing the way you feel by using your own thoughts. And I've talked about this quite a few times in other videos, how to use your positive motivations to keep you focused. And it comes back to the same thing, having the reasons you want to change and what you're going to get more of in your life. So that's what I do with my clients when we solve their sugar cravings and sugar addiction and basically binge eating, because they're using an external vehicle to solve their emotional problems, their day-to-day emotional problems, and it's not supporting their weight loss goal. When they change that to an internal feeling and are able to manage the way they feel internally, and this is a skill, right? So mental things, just as well as physical things, are a skill. So when you learn to play tennis, you start off slowly and you get better and better. Same with mental skills as well. You start off slowly and you build the skill over a few weeks of being able to change that external vehicle of using food to change the way you feel to internally with your own internal feelings and making yourself feel good. So that is the secret. It sounds very simple, but most things are simple. The difficult bit about it is just the repetition and how you actually do that over a few weeks to train your brain to just change the old pathway in the forest So the easy route to go down to a new route to go down, to start bashing away a new route through the forest, which is a better solution to your problem, and letting the other route start to fade away and overgrow and become something that's not used anymore. And then that is when the cravings go. That is when you empower yourself to make your own choices. And when your thoughts are not overpowered by the devil on your shoulder that's saying, oh, have this chocolate or have this cake. And you don't feel like you're losing control. You feel like you're in control, which makes it so much more easy to plan and work towards your weight loss goal and actually achieve it. A really important point here is to never cut everything out completely, because number one, you need to enjoy your life, right? Because life is for enjoying. Number two, if you cut things out, it comes back to what I said before about the negative instructions for the mind. So if you tell yourself, don't eat chocolate, you will be building the ability to basically do that really well. So you end up binging, and that's not what you want. And so when you do have your enjoyable amount of whatever you want, be it chocolate, cake, cookies, ice cream, you're able to not binge, and you're able to control yourself and enjoy the moment, enjoy the food, and then just move on and just continue with your day and be happy and be satisfied that you are in control of your thoughts and you don't have these urges that leave you feeling guilty and all the other things that causes because of it. So if you are struggling with emotional eating and sugar craving, sugar addiction, I have put a link to my email in the description below, because I know these can be desperate feelings. So feel free to reach out if you need to. Send me an email, tell me what you are craving and when you are craving and how you feel about it. And I'll be happy to give you some guidance. But yeah, the link is down there in the description. So that is it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, share and comment. As always, by doing that, you're helping other people see this video. Really important stuff, and you're helping other people find solutions to their problems. And so that's a really nice thing to do as well. So liking, sharing and comment really helps get this video up in YouTube. So I always appreciate anyone that can do that. But for now, until next time.